Alright, donotgod.com video presentation. Yeah. Anyway, I got my money hat on. Money. So anyway, Modern Mystic. He's made like 3 videos on the subject, generally speaking, of inflation and an economic strategy of sort. What's the future hold? And how are we going to get there from here, and what are the factors that are going to cause that? And so I totally disagree with everything he says, and so somebody should be providing the counter argument. Now, I have left a comment, and I thought maybe that would be sufficient, but I'm not sure anybody can ever read these comments, and they won't respond to any of the arguments made in them, so I repeated the same comment now on 2 of his videos, just because I think it is a good enough comment to deserve some sort of statement. So he's basically saying inflation isn't going to happen, and he's using arguments from like the 1970s, what generated inflation in the 1970s, which wasn't any real thing except for the prices, energy prices increasing essentially. So fuel got dramatically more expensive, and everything else got a cyclical inflation, a habit, a bad habit. And all you have to do is break the habit, it goes away, and that's what happened. The habit got broken, and then the world adjusted. Now there's just no chance of inflation because everything is, run by the Chinese advantage. We're still feeding off of the low-priced labor in China. And once that's over, then things can stabilize again. There could be inflation, but I'm going to argue that there's 2 kinds of inflation. Inflation caused by these little things get out of hand, where wages are chasing prices, or prices are chasing wages. If you give people more wages, then they bid up the price of everything, right? So then the prices go up, and then the people say, I want more wages, because the prices went up. And they give more wages, and they bid the prices up again. So it's wages and prices that are chasing each other. Because people sort of have the perception that if I get more wages, I'm not stealing it from the consumers, I'm stealing it somehow from the owners. The owners never pay any of the higher prices. If you increase the fees, or you do this, no, it's not going to, they keep talking about, oh no, you'll put them all out of business. No, they same business calculations. They just make all the expenses the consumer's expense. The consumer pays for everything. Pays for the flat tire, pays for the gas, pays for the employees, pays for the Social Security, pays any expense the business owner has, he throws it on the consumer. The owners are competing with each other. They're not competing with any standard price, right? There's no standard price somewhere where somebody doesn't have to pay Social Security, and somebody doesn't have to drive their employees to work, and somebody doesn't have to do all these things. They all have to do the same things. So it doesn't have anything to do with who the money comes from. The money always has to come from the consumers, everybody, essentially. And once the consumers are getting poorer because they have to pay more for stuff, because you give them a raise, you give their employees a raise, the consumers have to pay more, then the consumers say, I want more. That's the nature of the game. All right, so I said, I think the argument could be made that there are apple and orange varieties of inflation. So I would argue he was using inflation in the 70s and 80s as an typical example of inflation, and therefore saying we can't have inflation now because those things can't happen. There are no unions that are strong. They can't demand higher wages, blah, 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 blah. And it's true. The only unions that have any power are the government unions, okay, the teachers union and the government employees, and they're the only ones still capable of forcing us to pay them more. Now, I'd say they're not forcing us very persuasively anymore. There's lots of towns that are starting to say, we ain't paying you for that. We ain't paying you for that. We ain't going to increase your salary for that. So it's getting tougher, but it's still hard to break those government unions because they all, like if the cops go on strike, then the teachers do it in sympathy. They play in to each other's advantages. So they still have extortion power, but none of the private sector does. So anyway, there just isn't any more car industry union. There's no, the audio industry, there's just no unions. When wages are rising, the interest rates are rising. So the point is if you're in that kind of inflation, nobody's really getting hurt, because the fact is it's just a fact that the auto workers in the period from the 70s to the end of the 80s made a huge gain on inflation. So inflation was a number, like whatever, 20, 30%, and they gained on that big time. So inflation didn't hurt them at all. Interest rates on bonds and things, there was 10% bonds. I mean, so you could really make some money, okay, off of owning even those instruments, even in that inflationary period. So nobody really got hurt by that inflation. It just looks bad. It looks bad if prices are increasing every year. But if your salary's increasing and the house price is increasing and the car price, if everything's increasing, if your income is increasing at the same rate or faster than the prices are increasing, inflation is actually really profitable. All right. And the bad news is, though, it makes you competitively with other countries in the world. That's where it hurts you, because now your stuff looks very expensive and their stuff looks cheap. So you end up importing, and now you're not employing, and that's not good. But anyway, when wages are rising, the interest rates are rising, and that soft inflation that only hurts your international buying power. The hard inflation of big historical inflation, so then he used the comparisons to like Japan and Germany and Venezuela. These were all inflations that had nothing to do with wages chasing prices. So none of those inflations were, like, to go back to the Richard Nixon era, they would use a term like wage and price controls. The idea would be is that this is just yin-yang inflation, that it just happens because you keep letting this inflation, this competition between wages and prices to keep inching up. And so if you froze prices or you freeze wages, see, they're afraid to say wage controls. So they throw in wage price controls, because that way you don't see like, oh, they're going to try to stop my wages from increasing. No, oh, they're going to stop prices from increasing. That's okay. So the idea is just to stop the wobble in the boat. Just settle it so that those two things aren't chasing each other. But Japan, Germany, and Venezuela had nothing to do with that. These were all inflations created because the government, instead of collecting taxes, to pay the bills, just printed the money. So they just printed it. In Germany, they had no choice because they had these insane reparations they had to pay for World War I, and they couldn't collect the taxes. They can't get blood from a stone. So they couldn't collect enough money from the people of Germany to pay the tickets, whatever the speeding tickets they had to pay. And so they just printed fake money, essentially fake marks, fake German bills to pay the bills. And it diluted the cash, the German cash, and just made everybody's money less valuable, because now everybody had money. German money was everywhere. So again, you have a bidding war. Everything goes up in price. They can, because there's more people to bid it up higher, because there's more cash available to do that. All right. So that's a completely different kind of inflation. It has to be a concession. That inflation created by killing diluting your currency is different than inflation caused because wage earners are in a battle with consumers. Okay. Which are caused by direct currency dilution, cause widespread collapse and bankruptcy on both sides of the lending institution. So both sides, the lenders lose and the borrowers lose. Everybody's losing because they're getting back money that's not worth anything, the lenders, right? All the lenders gave out people money and said, you owe me $10. And then the lender comes back and gives you $10, but the $10 is worth 10 cents. So he's giving back you a dime. You gave him a $10 bill, he's giving back you a dime. You're losing money big time. And clearly the people on the other side of that are the people who are poor and aren't getting any wages, and now it costs a week's wages to buy a loaf of bread. So they're dead. All right. I will again point out they haven't printed the $8 trillion in the Federal Reserve yet. So people keep saying the government's printing money, the government's printing money. No, they're not printing money yet because it didn't leave the Federal Reserve yet. It hasn't left as cash yet. The checks haven't been cashed yet. You can't be caught for your overdrafts if nobody cashes the checks, right? I could write a bunch of checks, and as long as nobody cashes them, I'm not overdrawn, technically, right? So, there's a huge difference between when they're cashed and when they're not cashed, okay? You're more of a criminal once they're cashed and the money isn't in the bank. Then you're a criminal. Till then, you're not, technically. Till then, you haven't done anything disruptive. And so, so it's all about the Federal Reserve and the FD, nor have they had to fund the FDIC insurance yet. And so the other scam, so there's one scam of the $8 trillion in the Federal Reserve, just an uncashed overdraft. And then the other scam was to bail out the banks in 2011. They guaranteed a bunch of junk bonds. So a bunch of people who lost all their money on their stock, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, all that kind of stuff. All that stuff was bankrupt. And to protect all those rich people from going broke, which would have meant they're not going to be able to pay all their debts because they're broke, which means other people will go bankrupt because they need those people to pay their debts, or they're going to go bankrupt. So we'd call it a cascade of bankruptcy. So to stop that, they used the FDIC insurance fund to guarantee stocks that had no value. So it's just like you lose all your money and your IBM stock goes way down. And then the government comes in and writes right on the IBM stock, I'll guarantee the original price of this. So it was $100 a share. It's back to $100 a share, even though it's worth absolutely nothing. All right? The company went bankrupt, it's out of business or something like that. It's nothing. It's a piece of shit. And the government guarantees it. So now by guaranteeing it, it still flows through the markets. Okay? It's still a viable piece of paper. Nobody has to cash it out. You get it? So they never cash that money. That money just stays as a stock certificate. It just stays in the system, and nobody has to come up with the cash to account for that loss. So you'll only know that when you have to use that FDIC insurance. When people start saying, I want the insurance money, that's when you find out, oh, it's bankrupt. So then that's really a cash obligation. So that means the government would have to print the cash. So that's another $7 trillion. So you have a $15 trillion of bad checks the government's written, but nobody has cashed one of them yet. So they're all out there, but they haven't been cashed, which means the government hasn't had to print the money to pay the checks. So it's not until the government has to pay the bills that it starts printing the money. So that's when I say, when those events happen, that's when the dam breaks, and the inflation dam. That's when you'll get your hyperinflation. So, connected to that subject, there's a couple of subjects connected to it, frankly, that I'm going to get to, hopefully. So this is the cash and circulation chart, and it's not pretty. If you go back to a larger span of years, which I believe you can do here somewhere, but I don't see it. Oh, here we go. I can't see how to change it to some time earlier. Yeah, they took that away. Well, that's unfortunate. Yeah. But anyway, you see, it's stayed pretty flat for an awful long time. So, they're saying they start at 85. You can see that's really when it starts to trend up. So even when we had the worst inflation, the 70s and the 80s, see what I wanted to show was that line was flat in the 70s and 80s. That's when we had the worst inflation, 10% a year. So it had nothing to do with cash and circulation. It just had to do with wages chasing prices. All right. And so there's other ways to have inflation. So you can see this is going up, 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 and then it has this huge spike at the end. Now, obviously, the money's not doubling, so it's not a huge amount of money in circulation. There's only $2 trillion, which isn't a giant amount of cash in circulation considering the size of the economy and the fact that it's a world economy and the fact that the United States dollar is desired by a lot of people in the world as a reliable and dependable currency. So if they're going to buy a currency, they'll buy US dollars. But obviously also, the value of the dollar is only in relative to how completely bankrupt all the other countries are. So if there was any country that was actually not bankrupt, the dollar compared to that currency might not look very attractive. Because a currency they're protecting better would look better. See, all the other countries are doing the same thing. So as long as everybody's doing it, it doesn't look so bad. It's when you compare it to what it should be is when you see how bad it is. So anyway, so far it hasn't hurt us any is the point. But does anybody think that it's really not going to hurt? That you're not going to pay for that increase in the amount of cash in circulation? You're diluting what everybody's dollar is worth. Just the same way you would know that if you saw if there was an actual Joker criminal who stole $1 billion trillion or something, like $1 trillion, and then burned it, everybody would celebrate because everybody knows all their dollars are now more valuable. Dollars are like paintings. The fewer of them there are in the world, the more value your dollar has. So anything that creates more dollars, and just think how easy it would be to double how much money is in circulation. Just $2 trillion is all you need to cut your dollar in half. That's huge. And that won't pay, that'll pay 1/10 of the bad check liability. It won't even touch the deficit, which is a whole nother subject of all the money borrowed on bonds. And nobody will want to buy those bonds. So anybody who's rational is looking at these charts and saying, would I buy a 10-year bond at 0.25% interest? Yeah. Do I really think in 10 years I'm going to get back $10? If I was to put in a time machine, a $10 bill, and expect to pull my $10 out in 10 years, do I really think in 10 years $10 is still going to be worth $10? I mean, you got to be a pretty dumb person to think so. I don't think there's too many people that think the $10 bill is going to be worth $10 in 10 years because of all these liabilities. All these problems. They got all this whole problem with the old people, and how expensive they are to take care of, and that they don't have enough workers to take care of them. These are all liabilities to their taxes. They don't have, where are they going to get the money? Where are they going to get the money? Now, the truth is the rich have gotten obscenely rich over the last 40 years. And they own so many claims, non-currency claims to everything. The stock market, for example, huge bubble. Everything is with these huge inflated prices for their definition of wealth. And if they are ever able to convert what that says how wealthy they are, the fact is they're going to buy everything that has any value. If the stocks no longer have value, they'll buy everything else. And that's going to be the inflation you're going to see. All of a sudden, it's going to cost a huge amount to buy a house or buy this or buy that. Now, part of that you might think you're going to win on, but you're really not. Okay, because everything else is going to get insanely expensive. So it's all going to go fluctuating, right? Because there's going to be a point where the rich aren't going to want to own properties because they have to pay property taxes on the property, and they won't be able to find renters who can afford it. And it's like the food producers. First, the food prices will go up a little from inflation, and there'll be people buying the producing markets because they'll look like a good value. Food production will look like a good value, but it'll turn out that there's nobody who has enough money to buy the food. The only people who have the money are the rich, and they only need this much food. And all the poor people aren't going to have any money at all. So they can't pay for their food. And if they can't pay for what you're making, you can't make money owning the farm. If nobody's paying for it, you can't make what it costs you to produce it. So you stop producing it. Then there's less food. And then the price of the less food goes way up because the only people who can bid on it are the people who have the money. So you're out of luck again. So overall world food production goes way down because farmers can't make enough money to pay their taxes. They can't pay enough money to pay the rent to own the farm, so to speak, to run the farm. So it'll get ugly. really ugly. So I don't know if I need to say anything else on inflation, because so the point is for Japan or Venezuela or Germany to happen, that chart has to go way straight liney. Okay, and you just start doubling the amount of money in circulation over a period of a few months. And that will happen here if the banks go bust again. If the banks go bust again, the only way the government's going to be able to meet the liabilities is to print cash. They owe the money. They're going to have to pay cash out to the holders of the tickets that say, give me my money. So they're all checks that the government's obligated to produce cash for. They won't be able to collect the cash. Like I said, it's trillions of dollars. They can't collect trillions of dollars in 1 year and pay out all this stuff. So in any crisis, it's doomed. The FDIC insurance, it's a guarantee. They're supposed to give you the money. If they don't give you the money, they broke the contract. Okay? But the point is to give you it over a 10-year period. They'd still have to print the cash because they can't collect the tax revenue. All of this is extra taxes to pay these old debts. Where are they going to get the extra taxes? Okay. So the other subject was taxes. I want to talk about that a little bit. Because these people are just they're so dumb. So let's see. Is there anything else on this inflation thing? So people can talk about inflation, not understand the context. What we're really arguing about is when will the bubble break? And yeah, I have been way off. I would have predicted it 15 years ago. Because I wouldn't have thought it would even be possible for this kind of shenanigans. I mean, to use FDIC insurance, a thing created for the very purpose of preventing crashes. To use that to cause a crash. Too stupid, right? Nobody will do something that dumb. To not cash the checks in the Federal Reserve, that is to put a bunch of, to go out into the markets, the stock market, and buy a bunch of stock, essentially, to inflate the price of the stock market using the Federal Reserve Bank vault. I mean, to put these fake checks, these uncashable checks in the vault and take the cash out and buy crap on the stock market to keep the stock market going up. Who would have thought they would do that kind of racket? So, I'm just saying, there's reasons why my prediction wasn't correct, and they're pretty good reasons in the sense that who would have thought these kinds of gimmicks were possible? To say that Biden's going to come up with some new gimmick, I don't think so. So, I don't know when it's coming, but it's coming. That's all I can say. There's nothing good in these lines. These lines all mean big, big trouble. I mean, the Federal Reserve one, like I said, it's $8 trillion. I mean, it's this kind of line. $8 trillion of liabilities. That's got to somehow, it is all credit card money. I'm just saying, sooner or later the cops are going to show up and say you can't keep buying things on credit cards when you don't have any money. It's not fair. You're breaking the rules. All right, so let's do the other argument. Okay, which is on my video. Okay, so this is Quinexkio, whatever this idiotic moron's name is. So he's a racist, and obviously as a lot of racists, he thinks white people deserve their privilege, and they deserve to inherit, 100 years of legacy of killing other people in the world and stealing all their gold and stealing all their possessions, and that they should always keep inheriting this giant wealth that they have created. Yeah, and he doesn't think they should have to earn it. He thinks it's a good gladiator war, that the gladiators just go in with their ticket that says, see, my pa won, so I should win. Like baseball games should only have the sons, maybe daughters, the sons of previous World Series ring wearers. If your father didn't win a World Series ring, you can't play baseball. And the same thing for the Olympics. If one of your relatives didn't win a gold medal, you're out of luck. You don't get to compete. That's the world he'd like to live in. Because he's scum, disgusting, creepy, Trumpy people. All right. Why do you see taxing someone as a benefit? That has nothing to do with the subject. We know taxes have to be paid, and it's a political argument. I would prefer taxes be a lot lower. I would prefer we don't subsidize pet ownership. We don't subsidize people having kids. Lots of things I wouldn't be subsidizing, I wouldn't be paying for. I wouldn't be paying for a preposterous military budget. I would just tell the world, don't piss us off, we got nukes. Okay, I'd make more nukes, actually. And I'd just tell the world, just don't start any shit. Okay, because I'll nuke you. I would spend the money wiser, would be my point. I wouldn't waste it on a bunch of 2 million soldiers. I wouldn't waste it on that. And certainly with prisons and reward, the punishment system and all that, what do you call the what they call the penitentiary system. Yeah, I would make it a lot more efficient in the sense that I would make the penalties harsher. And because, look, paying $50,000 to keep people comfortable enough or survivable, they're not doing the bread and water thing. You're spending a hell of a lot of money on people that are obviously just showing they have contempt for your society. So, yeah, I'd have a 2 strikes and you're out rule. Okay, you get busted twice, fuck you. Okay, squish. We have a little machine just squishes you really quick. Squish. Yeah, an elevator, with an elephant in it. We'll make it dramatic, and we have a TV show so we can make some money on it. And the elephant will be in the elevator, and the elevator will just be, it won't be a real elephant. It will be a lead elephant in the elevator, and we'll just drop it on you. Okay, you'll be dead in a second. You won't even know what hit you, and it'll be kind of fun. And maybe we'll put you through like a little sieve, and then we'll let pigs eat you. But the point is we spend way too much money on people who are broken, and some of them are belligerently broken. Now, see, I think we should pay some money for disabled people to take care of them, but we shouldn't buy them seeing eye people. I mean, if you need 3 people to navigate your wheelchair, you can't see how that doesn't make any sense. That we're ruining 3 lives with labor to maintain 1 life in a shitty condition. That's really crazy. So there's lots of crazy expenses in the system now that I would certainly, yes, the biggest reform you could make to the healthcare system is to let people die when they want to. If they can raise their hand and say, yeah, I'm not that interested in living anymore. It's not that much fun. So yeah, go ahead. Just kill me, but just don't let me know you're doing it. Or however the thing goes. I'm just saying, clearly, huge waste of money. Keeping people who wish to be dead alive. Really bad. Really wasteful. So don't rag on me about taxes. Taxes have been created by you family first assholes. Okay? You're the one wasting the money, not us. You are. To me, you can't waste money hiring somebody and paying them a salary nearly as much as you waste it by letting some rich people steal it all and waste it on mansions. That's the bigger waste. Okay. All right, so going back to the first sentence. So again, if you don't understand that, yes, I think there's a huge benefit to having paved roads, to having a policing system that stops pollution, stops some neighbor from doing something outrageously dangerous to the other people who have to live in the civilization. So yes, you do need civilization costs some money, and I wish to maintain civilization. But yes, I do not wish to pay taxes to subsidize your asshole lifestyle. That's 100% true. I wonder how much money this guy has taken from the government for those kind of felonious reasons. Okay. Because you end up with the money. Well, Mike, I'd ask you, how many kids do you have? How many kids do your parents have? How much does the government subsidize their existence? The mortgage deduction. Do you collect one of those? Yeah. Is that more moral than inheritance? So I make the simple point that there's a list of things we could make for taxing all kinds of stuff on Earth, right? And the worst thing you could tax, in my opinion, is hard labor. So if somebody goes to work every day, does the unpleasant process, and he hates they have a nasty job, not just some fun job, a regular, a real job. We have to do annoying things or smell annoying things or be exposed to annoying things. You don't tax people going to work. So you could tax, work, going to work. Okay. Now, to me, that's the last one on the list, and that's the first one, right? So that's the one they tax the most now, is working. Okay. really, really, really stupid. So that's the one with the highest tax. Okay, working. All right, living in a house. Okay, another huge, gigantic, just living. That's it. Living with, you're owning a roof. Okay, just roof ownership. Huge tax. Okay, so two things that I don't think you should tax: going to work and living in your house. Those are two things that shouldn't get you any tax liability. You should have very little tax liability going to work and minding your own business in your house. Those two things really shouldn't cost you a fortune to do. All right. So here's the other choice you have. You have, you're making money off granddaddy's investments. Okay, little tiny tax. Little tiniest tax you can get. I mean, just a little tiny tax. Okay, for making income without doing any work. So income, no work. And it is no work because failure is winning, as Donald Trump proved. Right? Donald Trump failed dismally at investing his money well, and he'll never have to pay for that failure because he's exempt from his taxes forever. Until he makes all his money back. So until he makes new income that exceeds the amount he lost, he doesn't have to pay any taxes. See, so you really don't pay for your failures. You just write them off. So it's like you going to Las Vegas, and then on your tax form, when it says you owe, $4,682, you just say, no, I don't, because I lost $4,000 in fucking Las Vegas. So you get to keep your money. Free money. So this doesn't even count as a tax, right? It's not a tax. Okay, so income from investments, zero tax. Okay, and then the one I thought of, the one that's more glaring. I mean, purchasing, like buying food and toilet paper. Should we be taxed because we have to buy some food and toilet paper? No, I don't think so. And so there's this one over here called inheritance, which is 0.2. Okay, it's another one they've knocked down to nothing. Nearly nothing, frankly. And this one, the activity is doing absolutely nothing. This is just falling out of the smiley face vagina. See, if you fall out of the smiley face vagina, okay, you get to pay less taxes. Aw, Does that make any sense? So as reward and punishment, as using this to create a society or a civilization, does this make any sense? Oh, I make a much better civilization by taxing people going to work every day. Oh, I make a great civilization by taxing people by sitting in their living room, eating their gruel. No. You make it by figuring out what you need to encourage and what has no value at all. Now, inheritance has no value at all. It doesn't incentivize working. It doesn't incentivize anything good or productive. Instead, this free ride kind of stuff just makes it really easy for people to go get a doctorate degree in college and then just say, fuck it, I don't want to cure anybody. You paid a whole bunch of money to educate me? Who cares? I'll CEO or something. I'll do something fun. I don't want to bother doing any work. It incentivizes nothing good. You get nothing for it. It's just the most destructive mechanism. Okay, earning has nothing to do with it. So this earning has nothing to do with it. Whatever that spells, that's the world these idiots want. They want a world where earning has nothing to do with it. So deserve has nothing to do with it. That's the world they want. They were lucky, and that's all they understand. And they can't understand anything else. I'm lucky, and being lucky, I earned my luck. And it's really stupid and irritating of you to say my lucky earnings, okay, aren't something wonderful in the world. That I'm rich and you're poor. And it's because I deserve it, because I inherited it. I mean, so obviously I'm saying, get rid of this tax. Get rid of this bullshit tax. This is what you should tax. Alright, these should be the little tiny lines. This should be the big giant. The biggest line should be here. the most useless humans on this planet are the inherited wealthy. It's a toxic waste dump of shit. I mean, it's just pouring shit on your society. All right. So, but there won't be any counter argument to those arguments. All right. So anyway, let's see what else is it. Sounds like envy and greed to me. Okay. So he thinks the existence of taxes, which is not the subject, right? Or how much taxes should be collected, isn't the subject of the video. Who should be paying the taxes is the subject of the video. And I clearly cited the fact that we're taxing workers now, people going to work. We tax them for going to work, which is crazy. Okay. And that's the comparison to make. And so instead of dealing with that comparison, what would be worse? Taxing people who inherit their money or people who go to work to get their money? That's the question. That's the glaring, most obvious piece of the question. And he totally evaded that to play this little word game. So it just shows how weaselly these people are. This has nothing to do with the subject. Okay, so it's just a straw man. And, to turn this around and say, sounds like envy and greed to me. No, that sounds like what you have. You want to keep it, for your privileged race. And that's all you want. That sounds creepy as fuck to me. That sounds Nazi to me, or worse. The reason, even if it is $2 million. So I even put in the part where you get $2 million without any taxes. Inheritance, so you can inherit up to $2 million and pay no taxes. And he's still whining that somehow it's going to hurt something meaningful. Inheriting more than $2 million. So if you need more than $2 million to get by, you're such a cripple as the white privileged race. You're so afraid of a fair fight, okay, that you're going to lose so badly that you can't even beat them with a $2 million advantage. I mean, the people you're competing against, right, are, Bill Gates owns as much wealth as 70 million Americans. What are you afraid of? You have a $2 million advantage over people that don't have any money. They don't have any equity. All they have is debt on their credit cards. And you're still afraid of the competition? A $2 million advantage? They got 10 cents in their pocket. You got $2 million. And now you're going to go to Home Depot and buy materials to build a world. You have a huge advantage, a gigantic advantage. And here you are still whining about how, I don't want to compete. I don't want to have to fight for my life. They should fight for their life. Not me. I'm privileged. I'm from greatness. If that's how people from greatness talk, if you're so proud of your ancestry, aren't you kind of insulting them right now by pointing out how weak and feeble you are? I need to be protected from real competition. I can't run the whole race. I need a huge, put me halfway down the track because I can't win unless I cheat the fuck out of the rest of the competitors. I have to have an advantage. Don't you sound how weak you are? Here you are portraying yourself as some master race, and you can't play the game on fair terms. You pussy, you disgusting pussy. Anyway. So it doesn't carry much weight. So again, yes, only the silliest of people trivialize $2 million. A $2 million advantage in any financial game is a huge advantage. Okay, is that the limit will become $2,000? So more straw man, the pure, because I say so. With the stroke of a pen, it'll go all the way down to 2 million. Oh. I mean, it's like saying anything you want to do. It's like saying, putting a couple of air holes, in the fin on the front of your car, so you let a little bit of turbulence create. That somehow that means you're going to drill 400 million holes in the car eventually, and you won't have any car, but you drilled all holes in it. I mean, it's just such straw man argument. Bullshit, just such bullshit. Or we have massive inflation. So how exactly do you have massive inflation by taking the frivolous buyers out of the market? So all the people, and we know that, right? The only thing the inheritance wealthy are buying is paying way too much for way too little, right? So they make the worst kind of purchases. They force people to go to work to do silly things, like paint my walls purple today, and then 3 days later, I want them puce. No, I want them pucey purple. They squander and waste labor like nobody had to go to work, like it wasn't unpleasant to go to work. So huge waste is out of the economy. So we all get hugely richer because we only have to work 2 hours a week instead of 40 hours a week, because we don't have to do all these extra trips to the rich man's house and waste our time painting a room nobody lives in. Yeah. All right, anyway, so another fake argument that somehow causes inflation to tax rich people. Bullshit. It takes bidders out of the market. You can't create inflation if you're taking the money out of the bidders' hands, idiot. How dumb do you have to be to trust the government, this government? So again, yeah, he trusts Donald Trump, though. What a joke. I mean, an absolute putrid, disgusting joke. It's about the design of the system. It's not about trust, or whether you trust politicians or trust this. It's about the explicit policy. The existence of the policy exists now. There's a thing in place now. It's quite obvious. I can say you create less litter if you do this, if you change that, right? If you're paying people to litter, hey, guess what? I'll make the argument that if you reverse that policy and ticket them for littering, you'll have less litter. Like, I'll guarantee it. All right, so this isn't about trusting government. It's about policies. Okay, pretty sure you don't. You are just motivated by envy, it sounds. Yeah, like I said, you're motivated by racism and privilege and personal circumstances, no doubt. You put up no indication of anything. You don't have any character. You don't make any videos. You don't make any content. You don't reveal anything about where you get your philosophy from, but I'm sure it comes from the fact that you're playing the protected class. Okay, and it's not because you have any right to it. It's not that you can make any logical argument in defense of it. All right, so this guy says he has no doubt. Obviously, it has nothing to do with envy, and like I've said so many times, I mean, go ahead. I dare you to give me the money, because I'll show you how not to waste it. Because I know I'm not worth $1 million. I know my comfort isn't that much more valuable than everybody else's, so there won't be any Maseratis in my driveway. All right, taxation's purpose is to make civilization sufficient. Well, unfortunately, much of it isn't anymore. So yes, it should be, and clearly a big part of it is wasted telling poor people it's okay to have kids when it's not. People like you want free everything. They don't want free everything. They want huge cheats and advantages. They want head starts in the race. They're cowards. They want to cheat for their kids. Their kids are better than your kids. They don't have the balls to say it. They don't have the balls to write it on their house. My kids are better than your kids. Go ahead and put that on your house. And see how your neighbors like it. But that's exactly his attitude. My people are better than your people. I deserve inheritance. You don't. I earned my inheritance. I fell out of the right vagina. I mean, it's so illogical. Anyway, so he says, so it isn't supposed to be for envy or social engineering, right? Of course it's for social engineering, retard. Who wouldn't want to engineer the society? That's the whole point of the law, is to reward good things and punish bad things, you idiot. That's what the whole social justice system means, is reward good things, punish bad things. Oh, too stupid. So this Francis Dick, douchebag retard, it is indeed. I think amendum is great. Oh, fuck you. I think you're a piece of soiled toilet paper when talking about pessimism and antinatalism. Not that much when speaking about what kind of society he wants. So again, what's so bad about me saying we should pay people to go to work? Oh, what a horrible idea. People who sacrifice their comfort for your welfare, let's not pay them. No, I say we pay workers. Okay, they're the ones that run the world. They're the ones that create all the productive value. And let's quit paying assholes to decide, what color the background in a Coke commercial should be. I mean, you assholes want the world, paying people to do the funny thing is this, right? If we actually paid for entertainment, that is, we actually just paid them to produce programming without the commercials, then all the creative talent would be focused on creating a good program. And the irony is because of commercials, the money's going to, is being provided by the consumer to pay to be advertised to and convinced. And so there's more creative energy making the commercials that are on the TV show than the actual TV show. I mean, a preposterous, ironic imbecility that you're actually, because we don't just pay for things up front, we end up putting more money into the parts that are obnoxious, rather than, the creativeness of the obnoxious bits, than the part we actually want. That we're paying to make more noise, than we're paying to play the symphony. So stupid. So this is a really dumb comment, though. I won't bother reading all of it, but the rest of it's just moronic. Not that much when speaking about what kind of society he wants. Anyway, there's probably no country on earth where taxation is seen as a virtue so much as Sweden. So he goes into all this crap about what Sweden did over the last 200 years that has absolutely nothing to do with taxation. It has to do with kings. So he thinks the only time you need taxes is when you have a king. Here, right, it says here, and the king used the taxes to buy service. See, no, that's not what this is about. Right? This isn't about monarchy. This is about, it is in a sense that the inheritance wealthy are the monarchs. This is about civilization and how you build one. And is it smart to tax people going to work, or is it smart to tax people who got the money for not going to work? Okay. So, it's this Swedish crap. Like somehow this is the theory of taxation comes from Sweden. Or even the definition of socialism versus capitalism comes from Sweden. No, it doesn't. There's lots of examples of these things. You don't have to go to Sweden to see how the story works out or why it happens or what's more efficient. So this is just more, these are all just straw man. This is the straw man of saying, well, the Soviet Union failed. Well, it failed for really good reasons because it was lousy communism, okay? It was like, if that's communism, they didn't do it nearly right. Just like we're not doing capitalism nearly right. Okay, I find it particular with pessimists not able or willing to understand that the state is there to oppress ordinary people. So this is how stupid he is. He thinks the state is oppressing ordinary people. And in what sense is the state doing that except by these policies that privilege the rich? So the state is the only instrument that can make it a fair fight. And he's trying to say, don't use the state. Well, the state is the only thing that's going to do this better taxation thing. That's the only thing that can even the score. So he's pretending the state, by taxing the rich, did something evil. No, it didn't. He hasn't proven that doesn't work. So there's no argument here proving taxing the rich doesn't work. That the rich are always disposable. That tomorrow you could throw all of the rich into the sea. Okay, everybody with more than, let's say, $100 million. If we threw them all into the ocean tomorrow, you'd never miss them. Right? I mean, you know it. Every CEO could be replaced easy, no problem at all. It's just being a manager, right? Lots of people can do the job. We know that. So running the company is understanding how, well, I got to charge enough to collect in, to pay the salaries, do this, do that. They're not doing anything magical, these people. And all of the rich people do absolutely nothing. They don't work. They don't do any work. They trade stocks with each other, okay? They don't do anything that's constructive. None of that stock money has anything to do with investing in businesses or any of that horse shit. So we know that's all bullshit. So they don't do anything. They're of absolutely no value. They just waste money. That's all they do. They just waste money. Insanely, per day. Hugely high maintenance. They're the highest maintenance humans on the planet Earth. And we never miss them as a. They make zero positive contributions and just negative contributions. All right. The press ordinary people, so that's just such a joke, and protect the super rich. So he thinks the communist or the socialist or the economics of the 70s was protect the super rich policies. No, they weren't. Okay, when we had inheritance taxes, and we had certainly wealth taxes in the sense that we taxed very large incomes very, very high. And we didn't give you back your money when you lost it in the stock market. Okay, in the 70s, if you lost your money in the stock market, you didn't get it back. Okay, you lost it. All right. Not to provide security and justice for everyone. So again, that's just the dodge of the typical right-wing loonies. Somehow think the government is protecting the rich. No, you are. The government's not doing it. And most of the people don't want it done. Most of the people want the rich thrown in the sea. So anyway, most of the rational people, like I said, the Reagan Democrats were always assholes and idiots. So they go either way. So yeah, it's just a matter of saying it the right way. If you word it the right way, they want to throw them in the ocean. If you word it a different way, they don't. But just typical imbecile. Great comment from the racist. Clear racist, okay? I mean, blacks and Jews especially. Makes lots of comments. Overtly outing himself. So, no doubt about that subject. But anyways, that's enough. So nobody makes any coherent videos to argue with. So all I can do is show the bad video, like the modern mystic not understanding that you can't compare Japan and Germany and Venezuela, circumstances where cash was printed, to inflation that was created by the simple concept of prices and wages chasing each other. Yes, wages can't chase prices now because there's no unions. So without unions, there's little capacity for there to be any wage demand. People can't demand wages. And especially now that labor's been diluted. So all the imported labor means there's a surplus of labor. And unlike the 70s, you just can't work it. You can't work a job pushing a broom and demand a salary because they can replace you tomorrow with somebody who'll probably do it $1 cheaper. Okay. So, enough of a video. So, till the next time and such. Yeah, we'll do this little thing. So this has been a Do Not God video presentation.